welcome to The Art of Being Human. We've been talking about bullying, we've been talking about personality disorders, or I haven't quite started that yet, but I'm about to. And we've talked about how people react when they are being bullied, and if they can't attach to people, they have attachment disorders, and we did finish a segment on attachment disorders. But I want to start the segment with something that I saw on television, which I thought was really quite fascinating. There was a mother, this is a good family, they have a close family, well taken care of, but there's a mother who got a call about her daughter. Her daughter's probably about 9 or 10 years old, and the school called and told the mother that this daughter had been bullying another little girl. She had started bullying another little girl. The little girl that she was bullying was poorer, didn't have the latest styles, didn't have the latest type of clothing, was wearing hand-me-downs, that kind of thing. So this little girl had started bullying this child that wasn't as fortunate as herself. So her mother decided to put a stop to it, and she brought her child to a place where they sell used clothing and not the new styles, and she made her pick out clothes that she thought were ugly. And when she bought the clothes that were ugly, she brought them home, and then she made her child wear them to school for about 3 days. It didn't last any longer than that. But her little girl had to wear clothes that were hand-me-downs, weren't modern, weren't new clothes. They absolutely were used clothes and not the best styles. So as you would guess, this little girl, this daughter of hers, started getting teased. And she was teased for 2 or 3 days. Now, it didn't last any longer than that. And as a result of that, she knew what it felt like to be bullied, and she stopped bullying this other little girl. And since then, they have become the greatest of friends. The girl that she bullied and herself are now very good friends. They play together, they talk together. There were some people that were concerned about what the mother did. They were concerned that maybe the child her daughter would have a negative self-concept because of the fact that she was made to endure bullying for 3 days. But the child was asked what she thought of it. Could she have learned the same lesson by having her mother just talk to her? Would there have been a better way to teach her that lesson so she would stop bullying? And she said no. She said, I am glad that my mother did what she did. I would not have wanted to learn any other way than that. And as a result of that, I'm best friends with the girl that I had started to bully. And I was really fascinated by that, because one thing that really impressed me was the fact that the school took action immediately. They didn't wait and let it go. So many people feel that if a child is being bullied, well, that's par for the course. Everybody has to go through that. That's kind of a rite of passage. It absolutely should not be allowed. It's very, very injurious, very unhelpful, and very unhealthy for the child that's being bullied, and it's not good for the person who's doing the bullying either. So she took action. The school took action immediately, the mother took action immediately, and as a result of that, the bullying stopped and the 2 girls became friends. And I thought that that was a good idea. I'm impressed by the fact that nobody waited, everybody took action and stopped it as it was getting started so it couldn't progress further. And I think we would do best, if we have a child that's being bullied, we need to know about it immediately and we need to take action. And if a school is involved, and usually it is, they need to take action immediately and stop the bullying. So I just want to relate that to you. There are ways to stop it. Bullying does not have to continue. Now, I want to get started on personality disorders because our personalities are so important in terms of how we relate to people, and we want to know how the personalities start developing and what happens to a child that they develop to be a bully to begin with. And so I want to get into personality development. And to do that, I'm going to first of all just talk a little bit about personality generally, and then either toward the end of this segment or maybe the next segment, get into the personality disorders. The purpose is for you to understand personalities better, your own and other people as well, because you're going to meet up against people who have really problems with their personality. First of all, everybody has a personality. I've heard so many people say that somebody has a good personality or somebody has no personality. Well, there's no such thing as having no personality, because the personality is a total sum of everything about a person, you and everybody else. We have a totality about our being. It includes everything about us. This is what our personality is. This is what we present to the world. We aren't aware always of what we're presenting to other people, but our personality is a total sum of everything about us, and that would include your physical body, your physical characteristics, your emotional development, your likes, your dislikes, your beliefs, your gene structure. And the way the personality develops, it starts at a very young age, and I think part of it is genetic. What you've inherited, your physical problems, your illnesses. Do you have any kind of a learning disability? Your IQ, your emotional health. In other words, everything is included. Your likes, your dislikes, what you do, what you don't do, what you look like, what you love, what you hate. It's everything together. Because when you present yourself, if I can use that phrase, to the world, everything shows. You know, some people hide things about themselves. They don't want people to know that they're embarrassed because one foot is shorter than the other or whatever it is. But generally speaking, if we're open people, we let everything show. Maybe not everything, but a lot of things. As we grow up, we learn that it's safe, hopefully, to show ourselves and what we are. We learn that it's safe to talk about our likes and dislikes. And we get to know people, and we express ourselves to people, and they get to know us. What they see is what we let them see, and they define that as being our personality. And for the most part, we're open, we're honest, we say what we think, and they have a fairly good idea of who we are. Of course, there is a possibility that as we grow up, we learn that it's unsafe to talk about ourselves. It's unsafe to tell people what our beliefs are, or unsafe for any other reason to express ourselves. People who are abused certainly don't feel safe in letting that out, because they're afraid of the retribution if anybody knows that they have talked about the abuser. So there are, under certain circumstances, cases where we don't let ourselves out, and that's not good. It's not healthy, but I can understand the circumstances under which that would occur. So your emotional health is very important to your personality. I think myself that a lot of personality is genetic. You know, children are born, some of them are stubborn, some of them are compliant, some of them are friendly, some of them are shy. I think a lot of that is genetic, and I think a lot of that shows up at an early age. Of course, medical problems will play a part too. If a child is autistic, then by the time they're a toddler and they're getting extra cells in the cortex, and maybe they start shrinking back. But there are some, other than medical conditions, we are the sum of everything that we show. So part of it is genetic. If you take twins, for example, studies of twins, if twins were separated at birth, and they were raised by different families in different parts of the country and never really got a chance to see each other or know each other, maybe didn't even know that they were a twin, then eventually, as the years pass, if they get together and they get to know each other and they do psychological tests on these twins, they're almost exactly alike. They react as if they had grown together all of those years, even though they were separated. And I think this tends to prove the fact that a lot of our personalities are genetic. And we have, especially with identical twins, because they're so much alike anyway, not exactly alike, but very, very close. So if you take twins and you separate them and bring them back together, it's as if they were always grown together. Their personality characteristics match each other. And I think that's proof of a genetic part of our personality. And what's also important is the way that you have bonded. Now, if you're thinking about yourself, maybe as I go through this list, you can understand better about yourself, or you may understand more about somebody else that you're thinking about. But you need to know, how have you bonded with other people? Have you been able to bond with other people? Has it been easy to make friends? Or are you shy and retiring and you don't make friends? Did you bond well with your parents? Were your parents loving or were they cold? Were you able to have a good, healthy relationship with them? Were you able to open up to them? Did they want you to open up to them? Did they help you? Did they respect you? Did they treat you well? Did they support you? Or was the opposite true? You kind of grew up on your own, and whatever you did is whatever you did, and your parents didn't care much as long as you stayed out of their way. So you have to think all of these things, these early childhood things, make a big difference in your personality. Were you loved by your peers? Did your peers like you? Did they want to be with you? Or your siblings? Were you liked by your siblings? Now, I came from a family. I have a twin sister, and I had a brother. And I had a set of identical twins. I myself am a twin. I'm a fraternal twin to my twin sister, and she is 10 minutes older than I am. But we are fraternal twins, so we don't look alike. But we're very, very much alike in a lot of ways, but not in every way because we're fraternal. But my family had a set of identical twins, but they didn't make it. They were stillborn. And the doctor told my mother that she never would have been able to have told them apart. So 2 sets of twins in the same family. One fraternal, we made it. One identical that didn't make it. And also I had a brother. Now, we had a very close family, and we could always support each other, and we were always interested in each other, and we were always helpful to one another. And I have to say that I never really had an argument with my twin. The only argument that I ever had with my twin was when we were about 4 or 5 years old. And my mother did something that I thought was amazing as I look back on it. I don't even remember it, but we were arguing about something, probably a toy or something. She doesn't remember what we argued about either. But we had a huge picture window in our front room. And what my mother did was put me in the inside and give me a wash rag and tell me to wash the window for as much as we could reach, which wasn't much. And she put my sister on the other side of the window facing me so we could look at each other, and gave her a rag and say, okay, wash the window as much as you can reach. And so we were washing a window. I was facing her, she was facing me, and we could look at each other through the window. And we just started laughing. It struck us funny. And it was just like a minute. The argument was over with, and that was the end of it. We never argued after that. And so to this day, and I'm in my 70s, I still really have not had an argument with my sister. As I say, you can have a close-knit family, and that's very important to your personal development. Some children don't have that. They either raised alone as an only child, and the only way they can test out their feelings is with other children from other families, or just rely upon their parents. Children really need to rely upon each other to learn and test out their feelings. You know, if you feel a certain way, you need to run it by somebody to see how legitimate your feelings are, because you are going to believe that your feelings are the truth, even if they're not the truth. If I think that the lady across the hall hates me, and I'm just making this up out of my own head, you know, there's no truth in it, but just for the sake of an example, if I feel that a lady across the hall hates me, she may not hate me, but I may think that she does because she ignored me as I walked down the hall and I spoke to her and she didn't speak back. Well, most people would say, you know, she was distracted, she just didn't hear me, but maybe I felt that that person was deliberately ignoring me because she was angry at me, and then my mind starts making up stuff. You know, your mind takes wings, and maybe I think that she hates me. Now, she doesn't. But whatever your perception is, that's what you're going to believe. If you perceive that somebody doesn't like you, or if you perceive that somebody's against you, or if you have some kind of a misperception as to what's going on in your life, you will believe it like it's the truth, because to you it is the truth. The fact is, it's not the truth, but that doesn't matter. You're always going to believe your perceptions. Now, if you're intelligent enough, you might question it and say, this is the way I feel. Could I be wrong? You know, and the only way to find that out is to talk to other people. That's why it's important, I think, that children have other children in their family that they can bounce things off from. Otherwise, they've got to depend upon children from other families to do that, or their parents. And there comes a time when a child really needs to talk to another child because they're the same age, because they understand the feelings that each other has because of this. They're going through the same kind of thing. And there comes a time when a parent just needs to let that happen, needs to let a child talk to another child to see what their perceptions are. Because the adult is always going to give an adult perception, and a child is always going to have a child perception. And the perceptions are not going to match simply because of the age difference and the difference of maturity and the difference in brain development. So you need to have an interchange with children your own age. And the same with adults. You need to be able to talk about what you're thinking to other adults and kind of get a reality check, kind of let things bounce back and forth, because you can very easily misperceive something and you're not intending to do it, but it happens. So we have to think about the peers. What did you learn about yourself from other people? Do other people like you? Do other people think you're talented? Do other people think you're bright? You know, what do people think about you? And that forms some self-concept, which I'm going to get into. Did you feel that you were wanted? Did you feel that you were loved? Did you feel that you had worth? Did you develop a healthy self-concept? Now, a self-concept is how you feel about yourself, but it's even more than that. It's how you feel other people feel about you, and that's important. And I want to mention that. We think of self-concept as being what we think about ourselves, but it's more than that. It's what we think that other people think about us, because if we think that other people like us, then we're going to feel good about ourselves. If we think that other people don't like us, then we're not going to feel good about ourselves. And as a result of that, our self-concept is based not just upon what we think about ourselves, but what we think other people are thinking about ourselves. Now, it gets to be a little complicated. A couple of other things I need to mention before I close here. The brain grows from the back to the front. The front is the cortex area. That's the area where you make decisions and where you understand the consequences of your actions. If something's wrong there, then you cannot understand the consequences of your actions. Now, the frontal lobes are the last to develop because the brain grows from back to front. So the frontal lobes are not going to be completely developed until about age 25, mid-20s. And so teenagers whose brains are still growing, and preteens and children cannot fully understand the consequences of their actions at that age. They have to be mature. And the reason is the brain is just not developed enough. It's like the neurons are growing, the brain is growing, but not all of the connections have been made yet. And so what happens is it's like you are running with an engine and not everything's quite plugged in. So we wonder sometimes why teenagers take risks and why they do things that we would consider not to be of benefit. You know, why do they do such stupid things? Well, they're not stupid, but the brains cannot quite grasp what happens and what the consequences of their actions are, because it's just not developed enough to do it. And so we have to understand that children cannot perceive like adults. We almost think of them as little adults. We try to think of them as little adults, you know. You should know better than to do this. We never brought you up this way. But the point is the brain really doesn't quite get it. So it puts us in a quandary. We want our children to be good moral people, but they don't understand the consequences of their actions. So how do we get past that? That's like a dichotomy. They can do it, they can't do it. They can understand, but they can't grasp it. Well, what we have to do is just teach them, continually teach them. This is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and reinforce it, not in a punitive kind of way, but just reinforce it, because children, they will understand it to a certain degree, they will follow what they've been taught, at least to a certain degree, but to understand fully what happens and why they can't make decisions because their brain is not ready for it, that's something you have to explain to them. You're the parent. They're the child. At 14 and 15, you do not understand that you can't do certain things, or you can't understand what will happen if you do certain things. You know, I counseled a girl once in high school who got pregnant. She didn't understand that the sexual act beforehand had anything to do with it. She just didn't understand that. So I had to take her back and explain all of that to her because she just didn't understand it. Now you would think a child at that age would know, but she didn't. And so she was taking very risky behaviors thinking it was okay, and it wasn't okay, and she got caught. So we have to teach them, we have to continually teach them. And I know children are bright, they know a lot, they have a lot of intellectual understanding, but it's the common sense issues that they have difficulty with because their brain really can't quite cope. Now I'm going to close it now because I've done pretty much what I want to do, and we'll continue next time with personality disorders. Please join me then.